The moment Aisha stepped through the iron gates of Jeddah prison, a strange silence wrapped around her soul. The towering walls loomed over her like judgment, crowned with spirals of barbed wire that glinted under the harsh Saudi sun. Every sound, the metallic clank of locks, the echoing footsteps of guards, and struck her heart like a drumbeat of fear. She had never imagined that her journey to the land of faith would end behind bars. Her crime seemed small on paper. No passport, illegal stay. Yet in truth, she knew this was a verdict written by destiny for her defiance and pride. A narrow corridor led her into a dim cell, already filled with weary women whose faces told stories of shattered hopes. Their eyes asked the same unspoken question. Why are you here? But none dared to speak. The air smelled of sweat, rust, and sorrow. A single rusted fan rotated lazily, stirring more noise than wind. In one corner lay a worn-out mat that served as both prayer space and bed. Aisha sat down quietly, her mind spinning between disbelief and guilt. Images of home haunted her. Her mother's prayers, her father's stern yet loving warnings. She remembered his words, "Don't travel alone, faith never demands disobedience." But she had dismissed them, thinking her devotion justified everything. Now, that same arrogance weighed on her chest like a stone. As evening fell, a tall warden entered, his boots echoing against the cold floor. His face was firm, but his eyes glimmered with something unreadable. He scanned the cell before stopping in front of her. "What's your name?" he asked sharply. Aisha," she replied hesitantly. He wrote something in his register, then looked up with a faint smile that sent a chill through her. "You're different," he said softly. "This place wasn't made for you. Not if you don't want it to be." His words lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. There was something behind that tone, a promise or a trap, she couldn't tell. When he left, the room fell silent again, but her thoughts roared like a storm. That night, she lay awake on the cold floor, staring at the ceiling that seemed to close in on her. The warden's cryptic sentence replayed in her mind, whispering through the dark, "This place wasn't made for you, if you don't want it to be." For the first time, Aisha realized that her punishment wasn't only for breaking a law. It was a reckoning for the pride she once called faith. Days inside the prison began to blur together until Aisha could no longer tell morning from night. The dim corridor smelled of damp walls and iron. The echo of heavy boots had become part of the air she breathed. In that small cell, time seemed frozen. Except for the flickering of emotions on the faces around her, each woman carried a story, a hidden wound, and a silence that weighed heavier than chains. One afternoon, as Aisha sat alone in a corner, an elderly woman slowly approached her. She was frail but graceful, her wrinkled face soft yet wise. "Why are your eyes so heavy with sadness, child?" she asked gently. Her name was Khadija. Aisha tried to smile but failed. "It's fate," she whispered, her voice trembling. Khadija shook her head. "Fate is written, but mistakes are often our own handwriting." "Tell me, how did you end up here?" At first, Aisha hesitated, afraid of being judged, but something in Khadija's calm eyes felt safe, like a mother's embrace. So she began to speak. "I came from Pakistan," she said softly. "My dream was simple, to perform Umrah. I just wanted to see the Kaaba once in my life." Khadija nodded. "That's a noble wish." "So what went wrong?" "I came alone," Aisha confessed, her eyes filling with tears. "My father told me not to go without a guardian. He said it wasn't right, but I was stubborn. I thought my intention was pure, that it was enough. I left home secretly, booked a ticket, and arrived here thinking God would protect me." She paused, her voice breaking. "At the airport, my passport disappeared. I don't know if someone stole it or if it was my own carelessness. Without it, I couldn't go forward or back. They arrested me. That's how I ended up here." Khadija sighed deeply. "Your heart was sincere, but your method was wrong. You can't reach God by stepping over his commands. Good deeds don't come from disobedience." Aisha's heart sank. Those words pierced through layers of denial she had built around herself. She realized that her so-called devotion had been tainted by pride. That evening, the tall warden returned, The other women grew silent. His eyes searched the room until they found her. "How are you, Aisha?" he asked with a thin smile. "Still afraid?" She said nothing. He leaned closer. "You don't belong here. I can get you out if you want." His tone was smooth, almost gentle, yet dangerous in its ambiguity. When he left, Khadija gripped her hand tightly. "Remember this, my child," she whispered. "A man's help with hidden intent is often another form of captivity. Trust no one here except God." That night, Aisha cried silently, realizing that freedom could sometimes wear the face of temptation. The next morning began like every other, slow, heavy, and without hope. The call to prayer echoed faintly from outside the walls, but inside the prison, silence ruled. Ayesha sat near the damp wall, tracing cracks with her finger, her mind torn between faith and fear. Khadija had told her to trust only God, yet the warden's words wouldn't leave her mind. "Every prisoner has a way out." What did he mean? Was he hinting at something forbidden, or was it truly mercy? By noon, his shadow fell once again across the cell door. The moment he entered, all conversations died. Even the air seemed to stiffen. "Aisha," he called softly, drawing out her name as if savoring it. She looked up briefly, her heart pounding. "Still afraid?" he asked, amusement flickering in his voice. "I'm not afraid," she lied. Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay calm. He smiled faintly and stepped closer. "You shouldn't be. Fear clouds judgment." She clenched her fists. "Then speak clearly. Why do you keep calling me aside? What do you want from me?" His smile widened. "You ask too many questions. Sometimes answers come only when you stop resisting." His words were smooth, but they carried a weight that made her stomach twist. Aisha's instincts screamed at her that there was danger behind his charm. When he finally left, Khadija hurried to her side. "Child," she whispered, "you mustn't let him confuse you. That man plays with fear and hope at the same time. He makes you believe he's helping, but he only tests how desperate you are." That night, Aisha couldn't sleep. The ceiling above her seemed lower than ever. The guard's footsteps outside felt like reminders of her helplessness. She whispered into the darkness, "Oh God, if he is a test, help me pass it. Don't let me fall again into the trap of pride or weakness." But even prayer couldn't silence the voice of doubt in her mind. What if Khadija was wrong? What if the warden truly wanted to help? What if this was the only path out? Her thoughts circled endlessly until the call for dawn prayer broke the night. As she stood to pray, tears streamed down her face. The Quranic verses she whispered sounded different now. Not just words, but mirrors reflecting her mistakes. She felt her faith trembling, but not broken. Deep inside, she made a silent vow. "I will wait for truth, even if it means staying here forever." Yet fate had already decided that her test was only beginning. Days passed, but the unease in Aisha's heart only grew heavier. The prison walls seemed to breathe, closing in on her each night. Whispers traveled through the corridors. Stories of women who had trusted the wrong guard, who had traded their dignity for promises of freedom that never came. Every tale left her trembling. And yet, a part of her still wondered, was the warden different? One evening, as the sun set behind the narrow window, Khadija sat beside her, folding her thin blanket. "You're restless," she said quietly. "You've been fighting with your thoughts for days." Aisha nodded. "He said he could get me out, but his words feel wrong. Sometimes he sounds kind, sometimes dangerous." Khadija sighed deeply. "Child, temptation never arrives as a monster. It comes wearing mercy's face. The devil never says he's the devil. He whispers, 'I want to help.'" Aisha looked down, her eyes filling with tears. "I just want to be free." Khadija placed a wrinkled hand over hers. "Real freedom begins when you trust God, not men. You were brave enough to leave your home for faith. Now be strong enough to protect it." The next afternoon, the warden returned. His voice was calm, his steps deliberate. "Aisha," he said, "I've arranged something for you. Be ready tonight." Her throat went dry. "For what?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. For your release. Then with that same half-smile, he added, if you're brave enough to follow me. The words sent a chill through her spine. She didn't answer, and he didn't wait for one. When he left, Khadijah looked at her, eyes wide with concern. Don't go with him alone, she warned. If his offer is pure, it will wait until morning. The night hides too many lies. But Aisha's mind was already at war. The thought of freedom was intoxicating. To see the sky without iron bars, to feel wind that didn't smell of rust. She prayed through the evening, begging God to show her a sign. Yet silence was her only answer. That night, as darkness swallowed the prison, she lay awake, trembling. Every sound, a creak, a whisper, a distant clang, made her heart race. Her soul cried out, "O Lord, guide me before my fear guides me." Little did she know the true test was not the prison she lived in, but the one building inside her. The prison of choice, where faith would soon stand against temptation. The night arrived heavy with silence. Even the air in the cell felt thicker, as if holding its breath. Aisha sat upright, her pulse echoing in her ears. She remembered the warden's words, "Be ready tonight." Each syllable replayed in her mind like a warning wrapped in promise. Khadijah was already asleep, or perhaps pretending to be. The faint glow of a distant bulb cast thin lines of light across the cracked floor. Then the sound came. The slow turn of a key in the iron door. Her heart stopped. The door creaked open, and there he was. The warden's figure filled the doorway, his face half lit, half hidden. "It's time," he whispered. Aisha froze. "Where are we going?" "To your freedom," he said softly. "But we must leave now." No one can see. Her instincts screamed to refuse. Yet her legs moved before her heart could stop them. She wrapped her shawl tightly around herself and followed him into the corridor. The guards were gone, the passageway dim. Only the faint hum of an overhead fan broke the stillness. They slipped through a back gate. Outside, the night was wide and endless. A cold breeze hit her face, the first breath of open air in weeks. He led her to a black Jeep parked near the wall. "Get in," he ordered quietly. As the Jeep moved through the deserted streets of Jeddah, the city lights blurred past like ghosts. Aisha's hands trembled in her lap. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "To a place where you can start again." "A place that will test you." "Test me?" she repeated. "What kind of place is this?" He smiled faintly. "You'll know when you see it." They drove for what felt like hours until the Jeep stopped before an old villa surrounded by barbed wire. The building loomed in silence, its lights flickering like dying candles. "Come," he said, stepping out first. She followed hesitantly. Inside, the hall was vast, echoing, and filled with the scent of old wood and perfume. "Why are we here?" she whispered. He turned to her slowly. "Because freedom always comes with a choice. And tonight, you'll make yours." His tone was soft, but it carried something sharp beneath. Aisha felt a wave of dread rise within her. Was this freedom? Or another kind of captivity? In that chilling moment, she realized she had escaped one prison only to step into another, and this one had no bars, only invisible chains. The villa's vast hall echoed with her heartbeat. The air smelled of wood polish and perfume, but behind the luxury hid something menacing. The warden motioned for her to sit. Aisha obeyed, trembling. Her mind screamed that something wasn't right, but curiosity and fear kept her frozen. He poured himself a glass of water and spoke calmly, almost kindly. "You think you're here because of me," he said. "But the truth is, you brought yourself here long ago." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He walked around her slowly, his boots tapping softly against the marble floor. "And you broke the law, but not the one written on paper, the law of wisdom. You thought piety excused defiance. You wanted God but ignored his path. That's how all prisons begin." Aisha looked down, tears blurring her vision. "I only wanted to worship." He smiled to us, not cruelly, but with an unsettling calm. And yet you worshipped your own will instead. His words sliced deeper than she expected. Was he mocking her, or was he right? She had acted from pride disguised as devotion. Then his tone shifted. Now you have two choices, he said. Stay trapped in your guilt or walk toward freedom. What kind of freedom? She asked warily. The kind that costs something, he replied. Every door opens for a price. The way he said it made her skin crawl. And what is the price? He looked at her, his eyes dark and unreadable. You'll know soon enough. Aisha stood, her voice shaking. If freedom demands sin, then I'd rather stay imprisoned. He raised an eyebrow, almost amused. Are you sure? Tomorrow morning you'll be back in chains. No one will remember you. Tears welled in her eyes. Maybe, she said softly, but at least I'll still remember myself. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then unexpectedly his face softened. He turned away and whispered, Sometimes God sends chains so that hearts can be freed. The words hung in the air like incense smoke. She didn't understand them, but they struck something deep within her. He handed her a file. Read this when you're ready. Your truth lies inside. When he left, Aisha sat alone, trembling. The file felt heavy in her hands, heavier than any shackle she had ever worn. Inside, she sensed her past, her test, and maybe her salvation. The silence in the villa was suffocating. Aisha sat frozen, staring at the closed door where the warden had disappeared. In her trembling hands lay the file. The object he claimed held her truth. The edges were worn as if handled by too many guilty fingers before hers. She hesitated, then slowly opened it. Inside were official papers, stamped and sealed, her case file. There were copies of her lost passport, the police report, and written statements. Her eyes widened as she turned each page. At the end lay a document titled Conditional Release. Beneath it, her name shimmered faintly in ink. The signature line was blank. She felt her heart tighten. Was this a real path to freedom, or another trick? Her fingers hovered over the line where he wanted her to sign. Freedom has a price. His words echoed in her mind. A tear slid down her cheek. For years she had prayed for deliverance, but never imagined it would look like this, a bargain that smelled of deceit. She slammed the file shut and buried her face in her hands. Moments later, the door creaked open. He entered silently, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Did you read it? Yes, she whispered. And I understand now. You're testing me. Am I? He asked softly. Maybe I'm offering mercy. Or maybe I'm showing you the mirror you've avoided. Aisha looked up, eyes glistening. You speak in riddles. Why can't you just tell me what you want? He knelt slightly, meeting her gaze. Because my words mean nothing until your heart decides. You came here searching for God, didn't you? Then prove it. Prove that your faith isn't for sale. His tone was firm, but for the first time she sensed no lust, no deceit. Only a strange gravity. His eyes, once sharp, now seemed tired, as if burdened by memories. She whispered, Who are you really? He smiled faintly. Someone who once made the same mistake as you. The room grew still. Aisha felt her defenses falter. She realized that perhaps he wasn't trying to buy her soul. Perhaps he was trying to return her to it. When he turned to leave, he said quietly, Freedom isn't outside these walls, Aisha. It's waiting inside you. Find it, and the doors will open. As his footsteps faded, Aisha looked at the file again. The papers no longer looked like a trap. They looked like a test, not of obedience to him, but of surrender to God. The night grew deeper, wrapping the villa in an unsettling calm. Aisha sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the closed file resting on the table. Her thoughts swirled like dust in the faint yellow light. Every sound, like the hum of the ceiling fan, the creak of an old chair, seemed to whisper the same question. What does freedom mean to you now? The warden's words haunted her. Freedom isn't outside these walls. It's waiting inside you. She wanted to believe him, but part of her still feared deception. Could a man who once frightened her suddenly be her guide? Or was this yet another illusion sent to break her spirit? She stood up and moved to the window. Beyond the iron bars, the sky was a deep blue, scattered with stars. For the first time in months, she saw the world without barriers. Yet her heart still felt trapped. Tears welled in her eyes. "Oh, Allah," she whispered, "I wanted to reach your house, but I lost my way before even taking a step inside. Show me now what you wanted me to learn." Her words filled the silence like a confession. At that moment, the door opened again. The warden stood there quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. "You're awake," he said, almost softly. "Good. That means your soul is, too." She hesitated but accepted the cup. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. He took a slow sip before answering. "Because once, I also sat where you are, guilty, confused, and proud. I thought I was serving God while defying his rules. It took years before I realized that sin can hide behind good intentions." His voice had lost all its sharpness. It was weary now, human. "When I saw your file," he continued, "I saw a reflection of myself. That's why I brought you here. Not to harm you, but to make you face your own mirror." Ayesha's tears flowed silently. "I thought you wanted something from me." He shook his head. "I wanted you to want forgiveness." The words hit her harder than any accusation. She covered her face, weeping uncontrollably. For the first time since her arrest, she wasn't crying out of fear, but out of realization. "Then help me," she whispered. "Help me find peace." He placed the file before her once more. "You already have it," he said gently. "Now sign not for your release, but for your repentance." Ayesha closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the world felt different, lighter, truer, alive. The first light of dawn crept through the curtains, painting pale gold across the villa's floor. Ayesha sat beside the table where the file still lay open, her tears drying into silent acceptance. Something inside her had shifted, a quiet strength that came not from the promise of freedom, but from surrender. She finally understood. The warden had never held her key, her heart did. He entered the room again, now without the authority of a jailer. His uniform jacket was gone, his sleeves rolled up. He looked almost ordinary. A man burdened by his own past. "You didn't sleep," he said softly. Ayesha smiled faintly. "I didn't need to. My eyes were closed for too long already." He nodded, then gestured toward the papers. "You've read everything. You can sign now, Ed, if your heart is ready." Her fingers touched the pen, but she paused. "If I sign this, will I truly be free?" He met her gaze steadily. "Not because of these papers. Freedom doesn't come from ink and signatures. It comes when you forgive yourself and seek forgiveness from the one who made you." Those words broke the last wall inside her. She lowered her head and whispered, "Then I want to repent before I sign." She fell into sujud, a long, trembling prostration that poured her soul onto the floor. Her lips moved through sobs. "Oh Allah, I disobeyed you in the name of worship. I broke your command thinking I was serving you. Forgive me. Let this prison become the place where I finally found you." The warden stood silent, his eyes glistening. When she finally sat up, her face was calm, her eyes clear. He walked toward the window, opened it, and sunlight streamed in. "Now," he said quietly, "you are free. Long before you leave these walls." Ayesha signed the paper, her hand steady. The ink shimmered as if sealing not just a release, but a rebirth. As she rose to leave, she turned to him. "Why did you do all this for me?" He smiled faintly. "Because once someone did it for me. I was a man lost in authority, drunk on power. A prisoner showed me faith, and it saved me. Maybe now it's my turn to pass it on. Ayesha's eyes softened. Then may Allah free your heart as you helped free mine. He lowered his gaze humbly. He already has, through you. The door opened and sunlight spilled across the floor, bright, unchained, pure. The morning sun poured over the horizon like gold melting over the city. As Aisha stepped out of the villa's gate, the breeze kissed her face, soft, pure, and alive. She clutched the small file to her chest, not as a document of release, but as a reminder of everything she had learned. The street ahead was quiet. For the first time since her arrest, the silence did not frighten her. It comforted her. She had no belongings, no passport, and nowhere to go, but inside, she carried a peace that made her feel richer than she ever had before. Her steps, slow at first, began to steady. Without thinking, they led her toward the holy mosque. The closer she came, the more her heart beat with awe. When she finally stood before the Kaaba, tears streamed down her face. She fell into prostration, her forehead pressed against the cool marble. "Oh Allah," she whispered, "I came here through disobedience, but you brought me to your door through mercy." Hours later, as she sat in the courtyard, a kind woman approached her, an older Pakistani lady with gentle eyes. "Child, are you alone?" she asked. Aisha nodded quietly and shared her story in fragments. The woman sighed and said, "Then come with me. You are no longer alone." At her modest home, Aisha was welcomed like a daughter. She was given food, rest, and compassion. In the weeks that followed, the woman enrolled her in a small religious school where she began studying the Quran deeply for the first time. Each verse felt like a light replacing years of darkness. One night, she dreamt of the warden standing by a radiant doorway. He smiled and said, "Remember, Aisha, I didn't free you. Your repentance did." When she awoke, her pillow was wet with tears, but her heart was light as dawn. Months later, after her documents were renewed, Aisha returned home to Pakistan. Her mother opened the door, disbelief turning to tears. They embraced, their cries blending into one prayer of gratitude. "I disobeyed you," Aisha said, "but Allah taught me what your love was trying to protect." From that day, Aisha dedicated her life to teaching other women what she had learned, that faith is not found in pride or rebellion, but in humility and obedience. And sometimes she would tell her students softly, "Freedom is not walking outside a prison. Freedom is walking toward God without chains inside your heart."